The 10 most dangerous prisoners inside Angola Prison, Louisiana State Penitentiary, better known by one word, Angola, a place so unforgiving, so violent, so feared, that inmates call it a farm of no return, a prison built on an old slave plantation, where the past never really died. It just changed uniforms. But inside these fields, behind these razor-lined fences, are men who are more than inmates. They are legends, nightmares, whispers spoken only in guarded hallways and guard towers. Tonight, for the first time, we go inside the stories of the 10 most dangerous prisoners ever held within Angola's walls. Men whose crimes shocked seasoned detectives. Men whose violence reshaped prison policy. Men whose presence alone changed the way guards walked the tiers. Some of them run gangs. Some of them kill for sport. Some of them were broken long before they arrived here. And Angola simply sharpened the pieces. This is not a countdown. This is a descent, a slow walk into the darkest corners of America's most notorious prison. But before we begin, like, share, and subscribe, because the story you're about to witness is one YouTube usually won't show you twice. Tonight, we open the gates. With over 6,000 inmates, Angola is the largest maximum security prison in the United States. But size isn't what makes it infamous. It's what happens inside. Stabbings in the blind spots. Gangs that operate like corporations. An inmate-run economy worth millions. And prisoners who have nothing left to lose, except the last breath in their bodies. Tonight's episode will bring you face-to-face with men whose names echo through the cell blocks like ghost stories. But to understand how Angola creates these monsters, we start with one. A man prison guards called the Silent Hurricane. The Silent Hurricane. His real name is Leonard Hurricane Devereaux, but nobody uses it. Not anymore. Born in Shreveport, raised between abandoned houses, Hurricane learned early that pain was a language spoken fluently in his neighborhood. By 14, he was running with older gang members. By 17, he was carrying out hits. At 19, he committed the crime that brought him to Angola for life. But this isn't about what he did outside. It's what he became inside. When Hurricane arrived at Angola, he weighed maybe 160 pounds. Quiet, thin, watchful, the kind of inmate guards usually size up as prey. But you don't get a name like Hurricane from being predictable. During his second week inside, a group of inmates cornered him in the yard, trying to break in the newcomer. Standard prison hierarchy. They thought he'd fold. They thought he'd run. Instead, Hurricane stood there, his hands open, breathing slow, almost calm. Then, according to witnesses, he moved. And when he moved, for inmates dropped before the guards even saw the first punch. A sharpened toothbrush. A hidden piece of metal. A precision that felt less like panic and more like training. Inside Angola, stories don't spread fast unless they're spectacular. And this one spread like wildfire. Within a week, no one touched him. Within a month, no one spoke to him unless he allowed it. Former inmate, voice distorted. I seen violent dudes. I seen killers. But Hurricane, he was different. He wasn't mad. He wasn't loud. He just did what he had to do, and he did it like it was nothing. Hurricane became something Angola had not seen in years. A lone wolf who didn't belong to any gang, but ruled his space like he did. Discipline, patience, a natural calm in moments when other men shook. The warden once wrote in a report, Devereaux is the type of inmate who can turn a quiet hallway into a war zone in under 10 seconds, which is exactly what happened in 2008, when Angola's staff tried transferring him to a different tier. The moment they opened the restraints, he struck. Fast, silent, effortlessly. 2 guards injured. A third with a broken jaw. No word spoken before or after. He was sentenced to indefinite solitary, but even in the darkness he adapted, meditated, did push-ups until his knuckles bled, read law books, wrote coded messages to other inmates. Because the truth was simple. Hurricane wasn't trying to survive Angola. He was mastering it. And the scariest part? He wasn't even the worst prisoner here. Not by a long shot. The man who couldn't die. If Hurricane Devereaux was Angola's silent storm. Then Samuel Ironbone Keller was its earthquake, a man whose body seemed to reject death the way most people reject cold food. He had been stabbed. He had been shot. He had been beaten by guards, by gangs, by men twice his size. And yet, he walked Angola's halls like a ghost wearing iron skin. And everything about him, the scars, the dead stare, the way he clenched his fists even when resting, told the same story. He was built for violence. Origins of a monster. Keller came from Baton Rouge, raised in a home where shouting was more common than silence. His father was a boxer. His mother left when he was 8. He learned to fight early, because a father's anger doesn't wait for birthdays. He grew into a man who solved problems with fists, and later, guns. A man who, at 27, committed a crime so brutal, it made newspapers question how someone could feel that little. But Angola didn't break him. It refined him. The first attack. During his first year inside, Keller got into a fight with members of the vice lords. 3 inmates cornered him in the shower. One held a padlock inside a sock, a common weapon. Another had a homemade shank. Keller walked out of that bathroom bleeding, but the other 3 left on stretchers. An officer who responded later said, "I thought Ironbone was going to drop dead. He had 6 stab wounds and kept walking like it was a bad day at the office." That moment became the first of many stories that cemented his legend. The attempted hit. In 2010, an inmate gang decided to test Keller. They placed a bounty on him. Cigarettes, commissary, extra food, cheap incentives, but enough for desperate men. One night, as Keller returned from the yard, a young inmate rushed up behind him with a blade. Keller didn't flinch, didn't panic, didn't scream. He turned, grabbed the attacker's wrist, and snapped it like chalk. Guards said the sound echoed down the entire tier. The lockdown. Warden Burrow, Kane once made a statement about him. Keller is the closest thing we have to an indestructible inmate. It's like he doesn't process pain the way others do. After years of fights, hits, riots, and stabbings, Angola's administration decided to put him in permanent extended lockdown, the deepest isolation unit, used only for men who pose a threat to the entire prison ecosystem. But even there, Keller adapted. He did push-ups until his arms trembled, wrote bizarre poetry in notebooks, talked to himself for hours, analyzing his mission, whatever that meant. 2 guards swore they once saw him headbutt a cell wall during an outburst. The wall cracked. He didn't. Some inmates said he had no fear. Others swore he had no soul. But in reality, Samuel Keller had something far more dangerous. Nothing to lose, and no interest in dying. He was the kind of prisoner Angola keeps deep in the dark. A man who doesn't respond to punishment because punishment is all he has ever known. But even Ironbone was not the most dangerous man in Angola. Because prisoner number 8, he wasn't feared because he could kill. He was feared because he could control other men who could kill. The prison kingpin. Violence isn't the only currency inside Angola. Information is. Power is. And at the top of that pyramid sits a man nicknamed the Broker. Marcus Vondell didn't run a gang. He didn't need to. He ran Angola's underground economy, like a CEO running a multinational corporation. Phones, drugs, weapons, favors, debts, secrets. If it moved through Angola, legally or not, Vondell had a hand in it. To understand his influence, you have to understand who he was before prison. He wasn't a street thug. He wasn't a random criminal. He was a strategist, a chess player who saw 10 moves ahead. By the time he was 30, he ran a network in New Orleans that earned thousands a day. He didn't get arrested because he slipped up. He got arrested because a rival ratted him out. And that betrayal shaped the monster he became inside. The intelligence network. Unlike Hurricane or Ironbone, Vondell didn't intimidate with fists. He intimidated with reach. He recruited quietly. Inmates with no hope. Inmates deep in debt. Inmates who just needed protection. He gave them jobs, structure, and most importantly, purpose. His men delivered messages between tiers. Smuggled phones in legal mail. Moved contraband through laundry bins. Even used corrupt officers, men Vondell had leverage over, to move product, guards later admitted. We weren't running the prison. Vondell was. And they weren't exaggerating. The hit without a weapon. In 2014, a rival gang leader made the mistake of challenging Vondell's influence. He told other inmates Vondell was a fake boss, a man who was behind others. 3 days later, that rival was found dead in the hobby shop. No weapon, no suspects. The warden ordered a full investigation. They interrogated over 30 inmates. No one talked, but everyone knew the truth. Vondell orchestrated the hit, with one message and zero physical contact. That kind of power is far more dangerous than muscles and blades. The ledger. During a 2017 shakedown, officers found a small notebook hidden in Vondell's mattress. Inside were names, dates, debts, codes, transfers, payments. It was essentially Angola's black market accounting system, documented and managed by one man. They moved him to a different unit. Didn't matter. His influence reached across all 5 camps. One officer testified. It felt like he could control the prison from a broom closet. He wasn't the strongest, wasn't the most violent, wasn't the oldest, but he was the most connected, and in a place where connections are more deadly than knives. That made Marcus the broker, Vondell, one of the most dangerous men Angola has ever held. The butcher of Tier C. Some inmates earn their reputations through fear. Others earn it through violence. But very few earn it through pure, unrestrained brutality. Leonard Hayworth, better known as the butcher of Tier C, falls into the 3rd category. His name is still whispered inside Angola, not because of what he did on the outside, but because of the carnage he unleashed inside these walls. Hayworth wasn't a strategist like Vondell. He wasn't an indestructible force like Ironbone. He wasn't a silent storm like Hurricane. He was a predator, a man who took pleasure in the chaos he created. And Angola had to change itself, physically, structurally, to contain him. The arrival. Hayworth entered Angola in the late 90s on a life sentence for a triple homicide. The details were so gruesome that even hardened inmates were stunned. But prison psychologists noted something far more chilling. Hayworth displayed no remorse, no guilt, and absolutely no emotional response to his crimes. He was calm, polite, almost eerily composed. One intake officer said, "It felt like he was studying us, not reacting, studying." That was the first warning. But nobody was ready for what came next. The first incident, the shank of glass. 1 month after arriving, Hayworth crafted a blade from a broken light fixture, a weapon so sharp, so precise, that officers later called it a surgeon's scalpel. He walked into the dining hall, targeted a rival he'd never met, and attacked without hesitation. But it wasn't the attack that horrified staff. Attacks are common in Angola. It was the method. His cuts were clean, exact, controlled, almost surgical. It didn't look like rage. It looked like practice. That rival survived only because officers intervened. Hayworth spent 6 months in segregation. But isolation doesn't change a mind like his. It accelerates it. The worst day in Tier C. In 2003, Hayworth was moved to Tier C, a block notorious for housing violent inmates. He lasted there peacefully for 37 days. Day 38 became Angola legend. Hayworth secretly fashioned 2 weapons, one from a sharpened metal food tray, another from layers of melted plastic molded into a hardened spike. At 7:14 a.m., during morning showers, Hayworth attacked. He didn't target enemies. He didn't target gang members. He targeted everyone. One inmate was slashed across the back, another stabbed in the shoulder. A third, a new arrival, was cut across the face before he even knew what was happening. Officers rushed in. Hayworth didn't run, didn't panic. He turned toward them, smiling. What followed was a 5-minute standoff that Angola still talks about. Officers with shields pushed forward. Hayworth fought with an animalistic ferocity, taking blows to the ribs, arms, and legs without backing down. It took 6 officers to finally subdue him. 2 were hospitalized. One suffered nerve damage in his arm. The news spread instantly. Tier C had a monster. The special cell. After the Tier C incident, Angola took extreme measures. Hayworth was moved to a custom-modified cell. Reinforced glass, steel-plated walls, a meal slot that locked automatically, an interior free of loose objects, lights that couldn't be broken, shackles applied before the door opened. This cell was unofficially named the cage. The butcher was its only tenant. The interview. In 2005, Angola allowed a single interview with Hayworth for a psychological evaluation. The recording is audio only, and it is chilling. Interviewer: why did you attack those men? Hayworth: I wanted to see how quickly the human mind processes fear. Interviewer: and what did you learn? Hayworth: quicker than I expected. The interviewer later wrote, I have evaluated hundreds of inmates. Hayworth is the only man I believe enjoyed the evaluation more than I did. This was not a man driven by impulse, or anger, or survival. Hayworth acted out of curiosity, and that made him one of the most unpredictable, and therefore most dangerous, prisoners in Angola history. But the next prisoner on this list, he wasn't unpredictable. He was inevitable. The warlord of Angola. If Angola is a battlefield, then at one point in its history, there was one man who ruled that battlefield with an iron grip, a man known simply as Red Hand, a man whose name could silence an entire tier, a man whose rise to power turned Angola into a war zone. Daryl Red Hand Beaumont wasn't just dangerous because he was violent. He was dangerous because he could rally men, dozens of them, and weaponize an entire prison unit, with nothing more than a whispered order. The origin of the Red Hand. Beaumont earned his nickname long before Angola. At 15, he became associated with Baton Rouge Street, clique known for marking victims with a bloody handprint, a warning to rivals. By 18, he was running his own crew. By 21, he had committed multiple violent assaults. By 23, he committed the murder that landed him in Angola. But inside Angola, youth doesn't matter. Strength does. Influence does. Fear does. And Red Hand had all three. The first alliance. When Beaumont arrived on the yard, he immediately noticed something. Angola was divided, not by race, though that was part of it, but by power gaps. Older gangs controlled the economy. Younger inmates protected territory. Drug trade was fractured. Tensions were simmering. Red Hand saw opportunity. Instead of pledging loyalty to any group, he created his own, a hybrid gang pulling from multiple races and backgrounds. A bold, nearly suicidal idea in a prison like Angola. But it worked because Red Hand didn't offer protection. He offered purpose. His pitch was simple. Follow me, and you'll never walk alone in this place. For broken, desperate men, that promise was oxygen. Within 6 months, he had 30 soldiers. Within a year, he had nearly 80. The war begins. Angola's administration noticed a shift, but they underestimated the threat. Until the day Red Hand declared war. The target was the Black Kings, one of Angola's oldest and most organized prison gangs. They controlled contraband in Camp D. They ran numbers in Camp C. And they made the mistake of trying to recruit men already loyal to Beaumont. He saw that as a declaration. So, in 2006, the Camp D riot erupted. The Camp D riot, 4 minutes of hell. It started with 2 men throwing fists near the basketball court. But within seconds, the riot spread like wildfire. Red Hand had planned it, coordinated it, anticipated the response time of guards. Inmates armed with shanks surged forward. Fights broke out in 3 corners simultaneously. The Black Kings scrambled to defend themselves. One officer later reported, it was like watching a prison turn into an army war zone. Guards deployed tear gas, rubber pellets, batons. But the chaos only intensified. In the end, 14 inmates were hospitalized. 7 required emergency surgery. 1 officer suffered a skull fracture. No deaths. Only because officers regained control in under 5 minutes. But the most chilling part? Not a single one of Red Hand soldiers spoke during the riot. Not one shout. Not one battle cry. They fought silently, methodically, like a trained unit. That level of discipline terrified Angola more than the violence itself. The consequences. Warden Burrow Kane made a swift decision. Beaumont will be placed in permanent closed-cell restriction, isolation, no group yard, no contact, every movement escorted by multiple armed officers. But even from isolation, he continued to command his influence. Encrypted messages, gestures, codes, hand signals through vent grates. His army never dissolved. It simply went underground. One officer described Beaumont like this: "You don't see him move. You see the prison move around him." Red Hand Beaumont wasn't just a gang leader. He was a warlord, a man who could turn a disagreement into a riot, and a riot into something far worse. And if Angola hadn't locked him down when they did, former staff believe he might have unified half the prison under his banner. But as dangerous as Beaumont was, the next prisoner on this list wasn't a warlord. He was a ghost, a man who could slip through the cracks of Angola itself, the man who vanished behind bars. Most dangerous inmates are feared because of their violence, some because of their influence, a few because of their pure unpredictability. But Ellis Slip Carver, he was feared for something far rarer, far more embarrassing, and far more threatening to a maximum security prison like Angola. He made guards doubt their walls. Slip wasn't strong. He wasn't loud. He wasn't particularly intimidating. But he was smart, too smart. Smart enough to read a room, a guard, a schedule, a weak point, and slip right through it. He was an escape artist whose brilliance forced Angola to redesign parts of prison. After, he pulled off the impossible. The beginning, an unlikely threat. Carver came from Lafayette. Thin, wiry, quiet, the kind of man most inmates would ignore in the yard. He was arrested for burglary, but not ordinary burglary. He once entered a jewelry store without breaking a window, without disabling an alarm, and without leaving a single fingerprint. He crawled through a ventilation shaft so small, even police later questioned how he fit. When asked why he did it, Carver simply said, "Because it was there." In the criminal world, that kind of answer is rare. Inside Angola, it's terrifying, because a man who steals for profit is dangerous. A man who steals for fun, he's unpredictable. The first disappearance. Slip's first escape attempt didn't even look like an escape. In 2004, a routine head count came up short. One inmate was missing. Panic rippled across Camp C. Guards swept every cell, every common area, every yard. Then someone noticed a strange vibration behind a mop sink in a maintenance closet. They removed the metal panel. And there he was, Slip Carver, calm, smiling, wedged inside a space so narrow officers couldn't understand how he'd gotten there. When questioned, he explained that he had studied the prison's cleaning schedule and slipped inside during a shift change. He wasn't trying to escape. He was just mapping the prison, researching, investigating, studying the weakness in the walls. Angola had never seen anything like it. The second disappearance, the vanishing act. A year later, Slip did something even more disturbing. He vanished again. No alarms, no broken doors, no ventilation tampering. He simply disappeared. For 8 hours, Angola operated on high alert. Helicopters checked the perimeter. Tracking dogs swept the fields. Guards locked down the entire prison. Finally, someone noticed a ventilation grate in the kitchen area was loose, but not enough to look suspicious. Behind that grate, Slip had created a temporary nest. Blankets, a pillow made of clothing, a notebook filled with hand sketch maps, timing charts, guard rotation schedules, even drafts of fake security badges. One guard said, Slip wasn't trying to leave that day. He was planning for a day that never came. They never discovered how he moved unnoticed through 3 prison zones. To this day, officers still debate it. The greatest escape attempt in Angola history, Slip's final attempt, the one that made him Angola legend, came in 2007. It began when an officer noticed something strange in the laundry building. A stack of uniforms piled too neatly. Inside the stack, Slip was hiding. He had aligned himself between folded clothes, using cardboard sheets to maintain shape, breathing through a hole cut into a shirt sleeve. His plan was almost perfect He'd timed the cart movements, matched his breathing to the rolling noise of wheels, determined exactly how long between camera sweeps. He was 20 feet from the loading truck that would have carried him off prison grounds. But a guard tripped over a loose button that had fallen from the uniforms earlier. When he knelt to pick it up, he noticed the stack was warm. Slip was pulled out, calm as ever, dusting lint from his shirt like he'd merely taken a nap. When Warden Burrow Kane asked him why he tried this method, Slip replied, "I wanted to see if you'd catch me." Kane wasn't amused. Slip was immediately placed under a new category, movement restriction level Omega. It was created because of him, and only he has ever been classified under it. It meant no access to laundry, no access to vents, no access to maintenance areas, escort by 3 officers minimum, daily cell inspections, cameras pointing at his door 24/7, no loose clothing, no extra bedding, and absolutely no work assignments. Slip never caused a riot, never stabbed another inmate, never punched a guard, but his threat level matched any killer. Because Ellis Slip Carver proved one thing no prison wants to admit: Angola wasn't escape-proof. And if he had just a little more time, or a little more opportunity, or one guard who wasn't paying attention, he might have been the first inmate in 50 years to escape the farm. But if Slip was Angola's nightmare of intelligence, the next prisoner on this list was its nightmare of force. A man unstoppable. A man feared even by the worst of the worst. Inside the razor-lined silence of Angola Prison, nothing is ever simple. Every cell door hides a life that could have become something else. Every shadow belongs to someone who wasn't born dangerous, but became dangerous, shaped by choices, circumstance, and a system that rarely forgives. We've walked side by side through the stories of men who have turned concrete halls into battlegrounds, who've carved their reputations into steel and stone, and whose presence alone shifts the air in the room. These are the 10 most dangerous prisoners inside Angola. And yet, behind the violence, behind the legend, there's always a human story quietly waiting to be heard. Because Angola isn't just a prison. It's a reminder of how far someone can fall, and how few ever climb back. If this journey pulled you in, if it made you look twice at a world few will ever see, then don't let it end here. Hit that like button so this story reaches others who want the truth. Share this documentary with someone who thinks they've seen everything. And if you want more deep dives, more raw, unfiltered stories from behind the world's most dangerous prison walls, then subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because there are darker stories out there still waiting, and we're just getting started. Until next time, stay aware, stay curious, and never forget what lurks behind the gates of Angola.